Yeah, so this time we're going to sidetrack and do a little bit of a talky thing about something else rather than actually doing a whole bunch of gameplay stuff. At the end of the last episode, I spun together these two ore generation lanes, which for general purposes we can ignore the specifics of, but we've basically got a lane of iron and copper now, and what are we going to do with lane of iron and copper? If you guessed a kind of mixed build, you would be somewhat right. So I think I'm going to use this episode to kind of talk a bit about what mixed builds are and why they're cool and things they do well, and reasons why this one is weird and bad. So first of all, that's like the whole thing. Let's go back and talk about. Yeah, let's trace through the various materials and see what's going on. So we've got a lane of iron and copper each, and in the Spaceblock run, those come from, like, we just make them. In a general setting, they might come from, like, smelting that's nearby, or you might have outposted some copper, or maybe, it's unlikely train stations. You don't often get mixed builds outside of speedruns, but let's see what happens to each of them. So we make a bunch of green chips. We also make some steel. We've got this other kind of sideways coal belt running through the thing, which is, like, not super common, but a bit weird. We're making some plastic. We've got coils and plastic and green chips, which are, like, this bit over here is, like, the most common. It's the thing that this has most in common with other normal mixed builds. This is a weird mixed build. We're making some LDS as well. That happens in the any percent mixed build. And then the thing that really makes it a mixed build, we can kind of see it over here already, is that we make the red chips. They go on these belts in the middle. These modules and blue chips take the red chips almost as soon as they're created and just turn them into the other stuff. And then what we get out is kind of a structured kind of sushi, in the sense that all of this, the nature of a mixed build is the ratios are usually fairly well calculated. And so we've got modules, we've got steel, we've got red and blue chips. It's a mixed build is, it's kind of a speedrunner sushi way of taking belts of iron and copper and occasionally other stuff. Like we've got acid running through this vertically, we've got gas running through this vertically, and taking those and turning them into a single belt of high value stuff. And usually you like split these out somewhere else and like divert each of those bits to where they're useful. But so there's a couple of reasons why mixed builds are cool, and the thing, that it kind of, this one is still weird. Usually a mixed build will fit within the 11 tiles of one smelt lane, because you will have, and like the entire mixed build will be ratioed to consume an entire belt of usually copper. It's usually that way around, just because there's more copper that goes into chips and the other chips in the LDS, and you don't need as much iron. So usually the way the iron arrives is different. But the reason the mixed build is designed to fit into a smelt lane, and I can still achieve the same thing here, even in the Spaceblock version of it, is you can grab a blueprint of, let's not worry about the Spaceblock ore generation yet, let's just grab this much of it. And this blueprint is now like a vertically spammable thing that will process copper, process iron, or at least, process some amount of materials, and then spit out just one belt of a bunch of stuff that's all super useful. And if I throw this thing, I'm still doing this from the map view, here, so the gas pipes are lining up, the acid pipes are lining up. This would let me just give the bots a lot of things to do to have them massively expand fairly quickly the amount of stuff I'm putting out. But there's a bunch of stuff that this mixed build does that others, mixed builds are usually a fairly well calculated thing, because you want to make sure that the amount of copper, mostly copper is the bottleneck, the amount of copper you're taking off and turning into all these semiconductors and modules and things are like you're fully using that build, because you don't have anywhere else for this other copper to go usually. Other things that make a mixed build cool. Actually, let's just see if I can not mess this up this time. Already kind of mixed it up. Okay, sure. Okay, good. Now we can see the thing we're talking about. We'll revert that for like the rest of the playthrough, but just to be able to see the mixed build, we don't need all the darkness in the way. Could have done this elsewhere as well, but whatever. The other thing to notice is there's a very small intermediate travel time for all of the things that we produce and then consume within the mixed build itself. So green chips get made over here, they travel this far, and then they kind of travel like that as far as they go. And the red chips are created here and then largely used here and kind of used here. And if you compare this to like a kind of unstructured spaghetti base or a bus base or a rail base or something like that, the time that it takes, like this vastly reduces the time it takes plates to get turned into high value stuff, because you don't have to worry about the green chips being made somewhere and taken to the other side of the base on a train or on a bus. It also like significantly reduces the intermediate buffers you get, because you don't have to fill up a train with green chips before taking it to a place where you're using the green chips, and you don't have to like fill up a bus with red chips. You just make the red chips here, red chips get used by modules, red chips get used by blue chips. That's all cool. So let's also talk about, I guess we talk about the differences about why this mixed build is weird and strange. And so the first thing is, it's 2 lanes wide. It's 2 lanes wide because in Spaceblock we can just straight up generate all the ore we need. Like this also fits within this thing, and so I can blueprint all of this section as well. And in Spaceblock I just get ore coming out, which is, that's fantastic. This bit of it here now means I don't have to outpost anything. I can just spam all of that and just get a lot more raw materials out. The other thing that makes this kind of weird is, like, usually you don't bother prod modding coils, and you don't bother prod modding LDS, and you don't bother prod modding red chips. And also it's not so spread out. Like they're kind of mixed builds usually turn up in a couple of categories. The 80%, the default settings, the death worlds, actually not the multiplayer default settings, all the places where you've got bots, so you can just, did I have the blueprint? Yeah, where you can just like spam another 3 or 4 of these down. This is going to be more difficult for me because I don't have the landfill yet, but it's a good way of expanding your stuff quickly. But that's also not what I'm doing here, because of Spaceblock and 40 stack challenge reasons. Like, one of the reasons why this whole thing is kind of badly calculated is actually 2 reasons in comparison to a normal, like, any percent mixed build thing, for example. First of all, when you're doing the any percent mixed build thing, you know exactly what you're building. You know which research you're doing, you know how much science you need to unlock a rocket, you know where you need to build a rocket, and you just build a mixed build that's kind of well ratioed for that. And second of all, you don't bother getting automation 3 and level 3 prod mods and things and worry about upgrading your assemblers in your mixed builds, and you don't worry about beaconing your mixed builds as such. Whereas I'm not going to one rocket, I'm going to a lot of rockets, and I also need to get just a lot of extra materials out. So all these spaces are where beacons will go eventually, which is also why these guys are so spread out, because I can fit another 3 beacons in here and beacon all of these things and get more stuff out. And the second reason is, like, I can have assembler 3s here with prod mod 3s, and so the ratios on this are kind of weird in the sense that they're kind of straddling three, not just two different resource profiles, but three different resource profiles. So this is the first one with more or less a belt of stuff in, tier 2 assemblers with 2 prod mods everywhere on one belt of each of iron and copper. And that's also why all of these ones are still just stone furnaces, because the second and third levels involve upgrading all of these things, which I'm not ready to do yet because I don't have all the stuff and those networks don't connect, but they go around the side, so it's fine. This will let me get red belts in the same space. Because of Spaceblock reasons, these ones can just extend out here and I have to worry about the seeds a bit more, but that's fine. And then I can upgrade all of these things, and I think the first step is going to be, well, the second stage, the first upgrade will be tier 3 assemblers, prod mod 1s everywhere, also beacons everywhere. And that will reuse significantly more resources. The third level is where I'm upgrading not just the assemblers, but also some of the prod mods in the assemblers. So the green chips are definitely a thing that will enjoy prod mod 3s, they're high value. The LDS, probably not. The red chips probably want some upgrades, but the blue chips definitely. These things are also going to be RCUs, which are not usually a thing that turns up in a mixed build. Usually those, in a speedrun, you'll get all of your modules and blue chips from a mixed build and then make RCUs somewhere else. But because of how this run is expanding, we have to do that differently. Yeah, and it's also why there are kind of more chem plants on plastic than I need, and also why there aren't really enough, air quotes, enough red chips, because these guys are all going to get beaconed pretty hard, and also there's kind of not enough red chips for the number of blue chips that I'm making. Like, I'm not actually getting a big surplus of red chips out here, even though I'm going to need a lot of red chips, because once I get higher tier prod mods in these things, and also higher tier prod mods in the green chips over to the side there, I'll be getting more red chips out for the same copper investment. And I think there's actually space over here to throw like another 2 of these guys on yet that I just currently don't have the red chips for, because modules. Like, I need the productivity bonuses to be able to get enough stuff out for that to work. But yeah, so there's space here for beacons. There's also a couple of other things that, like, I don't know if mixed builds usually extract that much steel. I think mixed builds are usually pretty carefully ratioed. I think the default setting is mixed builds I've seen don't build steel. Steel is just a separate smelter that's copied and pasted, and the steel inside a mixed build is carefully ratioed for there to be kind of just enough for the LDS, and that's kind of all. Whereas I've got more than I need here, and extra steel is being evacuated out the side of the mixed build to go back into, like, it's a thing I'm taking back to the base because I know I want a lot more steel as well. So that's one major difference. Another major difference is, yeah, the way these undergrounds are set up. Like, this is one of the reasons why mixed builds are cool for speedruns, and why you do this with undergrounds, is because it means the bots have fewer entities to build. Like, if this was a piece of belt from one assembler to the next, that's like 6 tiles. If we count from here to here, yeah, which is 6 entities for bots to place. If we're doing this with undergrounds, that's only 2 entities for bots to place, which in a speedrun means your mixed build gets built faster, it comes online faster, you need fewer bots to build the thing. That's all cool. That's kind of the thing for me, except when I'm doing this, I've got so much landfill to places, that's not really the concern. The main concern for me is, can I put beacons in here to beacon all this stuff later, which is why there are 2 output lanes here when usually there's only 1. And the reason for that is basically the RCUs that don't exist yet. in that if I'm going to be able to keep this compact thing and have a space in the middle to put a beacon, then I kinda can't have another inserter here putting something on the same belt. I kinda need to keep this space free. And so because of that, yeah, and so I can't be putting things back on the same belt because it takes up space that I need for beacons. And so because of that, when these things are on the RCUs, I need the blue chips and the modules to be on the same of the two belts, even though I've got two belts. And so there's some jiggery pokery with which of these are input and which of these are outputs. And so yeah, these are I'm making space with these inserters to make sure that I can get all the things I need on each belt to be able to build to the next stage. So I've got the, which one of these? Yeah, this one is putting the modules on this belt. The blue chips also end up on this belt. Then the RCUs take from that belt. One of the other quirks about this versus other mixed builds is I wanted the blue chips closer to the belt with all the greens on it because I wanted to be able to stack insert them, which is not a thing you usually worry about with a mixed build because you're not going as far as stack inserters. Sometimes you beacon the blue chips. I think when I was doing things like mixed builds and wave defense, and I've seen sometimes a mixed build will turn up in wave defense. Sometimes there I wanted to beacon the blue chips, but here I definitely wanted to beacon the blue chips, and so I need to get these inserters going faster. Other things that are weird are this. So this coal loop here does some weird things, and this is very much a space block thing, in that, so this here is like a little overall coal seed that will supply all the mixed builds, but in each case I've got coal running down here, which feeds the plastic and also is the fuel for the furnaces, and then that's split off into the steel, which goes into the mixed build, and then the LES and goes back to the base, and then the rest of this coal continues off, which extends the pattern that arrives in here. And that's so that when I do the vertical copies of more of these things up here, what is that? Is it there? Yeah, there. I don't have to come back and reseed these space block ore generation recipes with coal. I just it will run from one mixed build into the next, and then the rest of this awful loop was trying to figure out how to get these things in the space that they needed, because I needed at least one belt for the coal to be built with. But if I'm doing this kind of loop thing then I also need simply this belt won't do for the mixed build seeding further copies of itself, because they won't get the coal. So the coal that arrives from earlier mixed builds, let's say, does this kind of circuitous thing, wanders around here, carefully avoids the space where the beacons will be, and then comes back down, and then the coal assemblers inside each mixed build, that is how they get their seed, and then they start working, and then they do the stuff, and then that's fine. And then yes, some of it is recycled back into their own supplies, some of it is recycled into the furnaces. Quite possibly this means that okay, problems to deal with later, never mind. Yeah, might run out of coal on some of the earlier mixed builds, but that's also fine. Yeah, then other things is, yeah, this is more chem plants than it's more chem plants than I need right now, and the reason is I want to make sure that the mixed build, when I upgrade all of these things to tier 3 assemblers with beacons and all that kind of stuff, that I can still get all the plastic I need to keep all those running, even though I don't get to upgrade the chem plants. All I get to do is beacon the chem plants, and so I've got more chem plants there than I need. The other thing is there's actually, even now, I'm not actually using a full copper belt. which I feel a little bad about, but you know, whatever, doesn't matter. I'm really not using a full iron belt, and even when I scale this thing up to tier 3 assemblers with a bunch more beacons and stuff like that, I'm still not anticipating using all the iron I'm getting in. Like, it probably won't use a full belt of iron, and so I don't know whether I just don't generate as much and save on some space furnaces, or the other thing I could actually do, which I quite like, is, what if I have enough of these? Yeah, taking some coal over here and having more furnaces generally heading this way. Is that gonna... that's also the wrong number. I wanted like that many. Is that the right number? Is that 6? Yeah, something like that. But we're gonna have to figure out how. Yeah, and make more steel here, because this other bypass belt here is also not a thing that usually turns up in mixed builds. This is a thing that connects to the other steel build I did last time, which now goes back into the rest of the base. And so this belt, if I continue this one as well through the mixed builds, will allow me to, depending on what it is I feel I need, either build pure steel lanes and dump it on the same belt, or use up other surplus iron as more steel and dump that on the steel belt in addition to the steel belt that's going over the other side, and just, you know, get more stuff out. Yeah, so that's pretty much the mixed build. I think and also kind of what mixed builds are and kind of why they're good. They're like, they tile nicely, they spam well, they reduce internal travel time, they're a good way of getting your bots quite busy, and you get to expand quickly. They're quite compact things, they take a bit of math, and yeah, they're a good way of getting a lot of stuff. And I think that's probably about all I had to say about mixed build generally, and also specifically this mixed build at this point. I think we'll come back next time and we'll spam a bunch of copies of this thing, and we'll get it making a lot of ore, and then we'll just like figure out what to do with all of these things once they get back to the base. Yeah, because the other reason why I went for a plan like this for Spaceblock is not just Spaceblock, but also the 40 stack challenge, in that I know I want a lot of stuff, but I haven't really yet thought about exactly the ratios of all the things I need. I just want a lot of things, and a mixed build like this is a nice way of being able to then copy paste all of the things a bunch and get a lot of stuff out. Like, I want a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff is going to be good. And so yeah, I'll worry about the exact balances of things later, but hopefully I'll get a lot of blue chips. I know I need a lot of blue chips. I'll get a lot of modules. I need modules. The LDS is not just rockets, of which I need a lot of. There's also a bunch of personal equipment recipes that need LDS. I'm going to have to come back with an upgrade planner sometime and upgrade quite a few of these things. So these middle belts don't need to be upgraded, but the input belts need to be upgraded, these belts need to be upgraded, the inserters before and after the coils, all of the assemblers, these furnaces, these inserters need to be upgraded as well, and then also these belts of inputs. But also, in comparison to how much you would have to upgrade, it's kind of the same thing about internal travel time. Because these green chips don't have very far to go before they get used, I can increase the throughput of this thing relatively cheaply by not having to spend a bunch of like materials on trains or materials on red belts to cart green chips from one side of the base to the other in bulk. I can just do it here, and then the last belt, this thing, is going to be pretty slow. I might upgrade that as well just to get things back to the base. But yeah, that is the mixed build. That's kind of what mixed builds are, and I guess what the plan is to continue to leverage this thing through the rest of the Spaceblock 40 stack challenge run. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. We're going to get a lot of stuff out. The bots are going to be busy.